For those who are just coming in, we are following breaking news here on News 8. A small plane, light plane, single-engine plane has crashed near Tweed, New Haven Airport. This plane went down about a half hour, 45 minutes ago on Charter Oak Avenue. It has gone certainly into one house. There was a fire that broke out at that house. We understand from witnesses at the scene that fire has spread to two houses now. And firefighters from all the surrounding communities, New Haven, East Haven, and Brantford as well, have sent people to the scene. The Rapid Intervention Unit from the Brantford Fire Department is also on the scene right now. And you're actually seeing a live picture, and you can see the tail of a small plane that crashed in the Charter Oak Avenue. This is in East Haven. It is not far away from Tweed, New Haven Airport, for those who are familiar with this area. Our reporters have talked to witnesses who were there in the moments after this plane went in. It caused a major fire at one house, and that fire apparently spread to another house in the neighborhood on Charter Oak Avenue. We have not gotten any confirmation on injuries related to this crash, although we have had people on the scene who've been at that scene who have said that a woman who lived in one house was screaming because her children were still inside when that plane went in. So we are awaiting the details on that. I want to go now to my colleague Kent Pierce, who is on the scene gathering more information. Kent?
Yeah, Keith, and the information we've gathered so far was interrupted a few minutes ago as they moved everybody a long ways back from that house on Charter Oak Avenue. We're on James Street. Is that where we're on? James Street right here. And Charter Oak Avenue is just up here. You can see all of the emergency vehicles that they've parked at the corner there, and they're bringing in more as we talk about this. They've told everybody who lives in the adjoining properties on Charter Oak Avenue they've got to clear out of there, too. I was talking to one woman. She was feeling very bad. Her new puppy is at home just two houses away from where this plane crash happened. She can't get to the puppy because they're keeping everybody away from there. I got to tell you, that is not a good sign, and by the looks on the faces of the emergency responders, we may be looking at some casualties due to this. The plane crashed at a house kind of just to the right and around the corner from the end of that street down there, and they are turning this street, we're on James, into basically kind of the emergency command center for what they're going to be doing here. So we've got people from all the surrounding towns all assembling here to be a part of this as they move forward. No more smoke in the sky from what I can tell, so the fire seems to be pretty much out at this point. But now comes what may be the worst part, and that is uncovering whatever was left behind inside that house when the plane hit. I'm not going to talk to you about rumors, but from what we're looking at out here, it sounds like it's probably going to be some very bad news for this neighborhood. So you're going to have to just bear with us while we work out the details. We don't want to put things out there before we have them nailed down, Keith, but it's not looking good.
Ken, have you seen any ambulances come out of that neighborhood since you've been there?
I haven't on this street. Everything's been coming in on this street. Keith, if you wouldn't mind, we got our colleague Chris Velarde standing right by me. He's not going to be able to hear you, so okay. I'll talk to him if you want to say anything to him. But Chris, you were driving home kind of over the Q Bridge when you saw the smoke?
I was on 95 like a lot of people and saw the big cloud of black smoke, so I came into the neighborhood. I was here, and it could not have been long after this happened, and the amount, and we've heard this on some of our coverage, some of the witnesses have said this, the amount of firefighters and trucks and personnel here at that point, and the amount of neighbors gathered was enormous already, just moments after this happened. I was standing across the street from this house, and I saw, two homes that both had pretty substantial damage, a car in the driveway on fire, and you talked about it, that stunned look on the face of the neighbors. That's the part that's the most disturbing and frightening at this point.
I couldn't get close enough to see the house itself. A lot of damage to the house where it hit?
Yeah, one of the houses in particular, it looked like the entire back was just gone. You could see basically charred structure, pieces of the structure, very little left of the house. The other one seemed to maybe have a little less damage, but there was also some damage to that house as well. Still smoking, and people talking about the huge noise that they heard when this happened, and talking about just the amount of smoke that came from this.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. And Keith, we're obviously going to have to stay on this because there is a lot more to this story. We'll be bringing you as we get the details. Right now, we're live in East Haven. I'm Kent Pierce with Chris Velarde. Back to you.
Okay, I'm just getting some information that that flight was coming out of New Jersey from Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. That's apparently where that flight came out of. We can assume that it was trying to land at Tweed New Haven Airport, which is very near that scene on in East Haven near Charter Oak Avenue. My colleague Gil Simmons has put together a map, or has made a map available of really where this incident happened in relationship to the airport. Gil?
Yeah, and Michael, in the back, I'm not sure if you can take the bottom font down right there, because the airport, folks, on this view is right down here in the bottom center of your screen. There you go. Thank you so much. And if you can kind of make it out, and I'll trace it here, folks, this is the runway right in here that would match the wind direction from around when this happened. The wind was coming from the south. So if I draw an arrow on here of how the wind was moving, it was moving in this direction. And what I did is I Googled up the location of where this street is to give you folks a perspective. And that's the little tick mark right in here with the letter A on it. So if you look at this picture overall, airport at the bottom of the screen here, and folks, this is the I-95 corridor at the top of the screen. So it's about midway in between the airport and the 95 corridor. So if it was landing, of course, airports are always set up for the primary wind direction. That's why they have multiple runway directions. If it was landing, it would be the airplane coming from the top of your screen to the bottom of the screen, always face into the wind. And that does kind of line up with that airport orientation for that particular runway, Keith. And at that time, the winds were about 22 knots from the south, so kind of coming in off of Long Island Sound. And again, this tick mark, and again, I just had a rough average marker there of where this road is in the street. And it's kind of midway in between I-95 and the actual Tweed Airport location. And plus, there were some showers developing just off to the west that were kind of closing in on the airport. Not to mention that in the world of weather, we've been closely monitoring all this wind in the atmosphere today, because this kind of wind setup can create tornadoes. So I've been watching the radar extra closely, and it's the type of thing, Keith, you kind of take off in an airplane, it could be 20, 25 miles an hour, but 800 feet, 1,000 feet up, all of a sudden it's 40, 50 miles per hour. So very rough conditions weather-wise. And again, I'm not pinning that down as the ultimate problem here, but these are things that the FAA and all the investigators will be looking at. We do have some new video from the scene. This is obviously shortly after this crash occurred at about 11:30 this morning. A little bit earlier than that, 11:25 in the morning. You can see a house on fire. Firefighters also working to take care of some flames in a car. We understand that at least 2 homes suffered damages in this incident. Firefighters from New Haven, East Haven, Branford, North Haven all responding to the scene. Again, we now have information from the Associated Press that this was a multi-engine aircraft that had just left from Teterboro Airport this morning in New Jersey and was on approach to Tweed New Haven Airport when this crash occurred. Obviously, the NTSB will be involved in determining a cause. That will be a lengthy process. Right now, I want to go back to my colleague Stephanie Simoni, who I understand is talking to a woman who has somebody who lives very near that site.
Yeah, Keith, that's what we're starting to see is a lot of family and friends. They're starting to come down to the scene, see if their family, their friends are okay. Everyone really worried about their loved ones in this area, and one of them is Denise Baines. And Denise, fortunately, you were able to talk to your friend, but she lives right next to this house. What did she tell you?
Well, she told me that she actually saw the whole thing happen. So the plane started smoking, and then it came down and it hit a house. And her husband actually went into the house to help the kids. The woman that lived in the house, she came running out and she said her kids were in the house. And they went in to try to get the kids. From what I know, I don't think they got the kids out.
Well, all of that, we still don't know. All of that information is still not confirmed from any sort of authority. But how is your friend holding up? That must have been so scary.
It is. She's very upset. It was traumatizing for her and her husband. But they're holding out pretty good.
And you said they rushed into that house? What made them do that?
Because they actually saw it happen, and it was just to try to help. When you see something like that, such a tragic accident, your first intuition is to try to help.
Live. News 8 at 5 starts now.
A quiet, rainy morning shattered in East Haven when a plane falls from the sky.
It was a boom sound, and then I heard a couple of fire engines and rescue trucks go by. So I came outside and I saw the big plume of black smoke.
The plane was trying to land.
Plane struck two houses. The fuselage portion of the plane entered one of the houses.
Two homes erupt in flames. One of them had two kids inside. Tonight, the investigation into just what led to the crash and what's happening now.
It was sad. It was sad. It was a really sad thing to say. You don't expect it to happen.
Hi, everybody. Glad you're with us tonight. I'm Darren Kramer.
I'm Sonia Baghdadi. Tonight, we know at least 2 people have been killed, a third feared dead. Police say 2 of the victims are kids who were in one of the houses, and the other is the pilot, and we're told that there could be more victims.
We have late word in tonight on the ID of the pilot and perhaps one person on the plane. Our ABC affiliate in Seattle reporting tonight that a former Microsoft executive, Bill Henningsgaard, and his son were on that plane. Henningsgaard was a Microsoft vice president for 14 years. He had been involved in another small plane crash back in 2009 when the plane he was flying had engine trouble and wound up in the Columbia River in Washington State. This time, the twin-engine plane crashed into 2 homes on Charter Oak Avenue in East Haven just before 11:30 this morning.
And we have live team coverage tonight covering every angle of the story. We want to start with News 8's Kent Pierce, who's live in East Haven. We're expected to get an update on the crash. A press conference about to start, Kent.
Our hearts go out to them. We have people assisting the family here in East Haven. We have the Yale Child Study Center and the Employees Assistance Program to help with any young children in the community who witnessed this or were here for this, and people here to assist the fire department, police department, and the investigators.
Live. News 8 at 6 starts now.
Oh my God.
A chaotic scene as neighbors rush to help after a plane crashes into 2 homes. At least 2 people are dead, and tonight, investigators are working to figure out what went wrong.
And good evening, I'm Ann Nyberg.
And I'm Keith Kuntz. A scene of destruction in East Haven after a plane heading to Tweed New Haven Airport crashes into 2 homes.
Authorities say at this hour, anyway, there are at least 3 people unaccounted for, including 2 children who were inside one of those 2 homes.
2 bodies were found there, but so far there's no word on their identities. Also tonight, late word on the ID of the pilot and the one other person on board that plane. Our ABC affiliate in Seattle is reporting that a former Microsoft executive, Bill Henningsgaard, and his son were on board that plane. Henningsgaard was a Microsoft vice president for some 14 years. He was also involved in another crash back in 2009 when the plane he was flying had some engine trouble and it wound up in the Columbia River in Washington State.
And of course, News 8 is covering the stories from the response by police and firefighters to a neighborhood coming together to help in any way they can. We begin our team coverage tonight with News 8's Kent Pierce, who is live in East Haven. Kent.
Here's what we do know. There's a lot we don't know, but here's what we do know about this plane. It took off from Teterboro, New Jersey at about 10:49 this morning and crashed just about a quarter-mile north of Tweed New Haven Airport at about 11:22 this morning. It crashed into 2 houses on Charter Oak Avenue, and that's when all heck broke loose around here. That's when the firefighters had to get here and try to save the houses and the people inside. It was around 11:20 in the morning when firefighters got to Charter Oak Avenue. They found 2 houses, an airplane, and a car all on fire.
There was a huge amount of fire involved. There were some problems with wires. There's a lot of issues that we dealt with right up front.
It was pretty heated up. He hit a main line. It was popping all over the place.
Firefighters tried to search the house, but the fire was too intense. Neighbors say a mother was crying out that her 2 children were inside one of those houses. Their ages 1 year and 13 years old. And then there's whoever was on that plane. Right now, officials can only say that they've found 2 bodies so far.
We only know we have 2 victims. We don't know who. We don't know the ages. We can't really get into the house right now. It's still unstable.
So what happened to that plane, a twin engine flying from Teterboro, New Jersey? Tweed airport officials say it tried to make an instrument landing on runway 2.
All we know is that it missed the approach and continued on, and there were no distress calls.
There was some nasty weather at the time around here, rain and wind. That might have played a factor. There might have been something wrong with the plane. There might have been a problem with the pilot, an error by him. Apparently, he has crashed before. That will all be part of the NTSB investigation. That's also why we can't tell you more about how many victims we may have here, because it's the National Transportation Safety Board that is in charge of this investigation. They're not on scene yet, so local officials have to wait for the federal officials to get here before they can really do much else at this point. That's what everybody is waiting for. That's what all those emergency workers back there in those vehicles are waiting for this afternoon. We're live in East Haven. I'm Kent Pierce. Back to you.
All right, Ken, for those not familiar with the area, that plane went down in a residential neighborhood in East Haven, just about a mile away from the runways at Tweed.
Several people saw the crash and ran to the scene to help in any way they could. News 8's Stephanie Simone has been on the scene from the start. She has that part of the story. Stephanie.
And Keith, when that plane crashed into the 2 homes, neighbors heard it throughout this area. That's when they rushed in to see what happened. Some went to help, some just wanted to know what happened. One was Wilson Avidro, and he was shooting video on his cell phone camera, and he went right behind the house and saw the plane into the house. He was shooting video the entire time. Then he realized people were inside that home. He dropped the cell phone camera, went inside to help. But before he went inside to help, once again, he was shooting that video, and he gave that video to us. And I want to warn viewers that some of this video could be difficult to watch.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What is the water? You don't have a water hose or something?
No, I got no hose.
Oh my gosh. Hey, this is dangerous.
Yeah, but it was right. Plane hit it, huh?
Yeah.
Come on. Oh.
Are you going there? Hello?
Oh my God.
Hello?
Is there a kid in there?
I don't know.
There's 2 babies. Hello?
2 babies?
We gotta get some kids out of here.
Where's the kid?
I don't know.
Those are some very tense moments right there. Avidro did go into the home. He said he could not see anyone, and then he quickly got out of the house. Other neighbors rushed to their aid when this crash happened. Take a listen at the first-hand accounts. Smoke and flames pour out of this East Haven home. 2 children are trapped inside after a plane crashes in on them.
And the plane was really low, and we always see planes, but they're never that low, so close to the center of town.
The impact was heard throughout the neighborhood.
It was a boom sound, and then I heard a couple of fire engines and rescue trucks go by. So I came outside and I saw the big plume of black smoke.
The plane went right into the house, and supposedly they said there were children there.
Some saw neighbors rush inside to help, followed by firefighters, but it was too late.
One of the firemen was crying on saying that they just couldn't get to the kids.
Family rushed through police lines. A priest came soon afterward, and just as many ran to help minutes after the tragedy. They believe this aid will continue months and years down the road.
No, you don't realize how close and how much everybody cares about each other until something happens, and then you see all your neighbors outside caring about everybody.
And that has been the genuine feeling here throughout the East Haven neighborhood. Many neighbors wanting to know what they can do to help this family. We are live in East Haven tonight. Stephanie Simone, News 8.
Live, this is News 8 at 11.
Oh my God.
A quiet, rainy morning in East Haven shattered in an instant. A twin-engine plane trying to land at Tweed plows into two homes and bursts into flames.
Hello?
Oh my God.
Hello?
Is there a kid in there?
I don't know.
There's two babies.
Police say there were two children in one of those houses and reports that on the plane a Seattle pilot and his son. Tonight, a neighborhood and a city in shock.
Hi, everybody. Glad you're with us tonight. I'm Darren Kramer.
I'm Sonia Baghdadi. Tonight, investigators in East Haven are still trying to figure out how many people died when a plane crashed into two houses. Now, we do know tonight at least 2 people were killed on the ground and at least 2 people were killed on the plane.
Happened just before 11:30 this morning on Charter Oak Ave in East Haven. We have live team coverage of the crash and the investigation tonight. Let's start with News 8's Neka Nwosu. She's live in East Haven with the latest. Neka?
Darren, Sonia, the NTSB tells us that none of the victims have been positively identified at this point. I'm going to step out of the way so that you can see what the scene looks like here. Nearly 12 hours later, it is still a very active scene. The NTSB tells us that they are now assisting state and local departments as they work to recover and possibly identify bodies. At least 4 to 6 people dead after a small plane crashed into 2 East Haven homes.
It was inverted with the left wing in one house, the right wing in the other, and I would say probably about 50 to 60% of it was consumed by fire.
The plane was heading towards Tweed New Haven Airport around noon Friday. There are reports former Microsoft executive Bill Henningsgaard and his son were inside the aircraft and died. People who live in the area describe the plane coming down in a circular motion and then a dramatic scene.
The plane exploded so quickly that there was no hope.
Fire and rescue crews arrived quickly, but officials say the damage has made it difficult to find possible bodies.
Part of the plane is actually in the basement, and obviously so some of the houses in the basement as well. So as I speak to you now, the state police are working with the fire department to go through the house to look for victims.
Witnesses report seeing a woman running out of this home screaming that her children were still inside.
I have spoken to the mom. I spoke to the mom a couple of times. All things considered, of course, she's devastated. Right now, the last time I understand, she was at the hospital being checked out. But all things considered, how any other mom would be.
The NTSB is looking into weather as a possible cause, but this will be a lengthy investigation. Now we are back live here in East Haven. Now there were some questions tonight as to whether or not the plane could have lost fuel and that could have caused the crash. The NTSB says that is unlikely because the pilot filled up before taking off this morning. Now we're told that the engine manufacturer and the wing manufacturer are expected on scene as soon as tomorrow. And the NTSB says it could have some preliminary reports in the next 5 to 10 days. We're live in East Haven tonight. Neka Nwosu, News 8.
Well, News 8's Noelle Gardner continues our team coverage. She's live in East Haven with that part of the story. Noelle?
Right now, multiple agencies are here on the ground. They're concentrating on that search and recovery. Residents are watching crews comb through the wreckage. They describe this as a surreal situation and horrific.
Yeah, I heard it very loud. It was very loud.
Yeah. 10-year-old Almendra Carino is just one of many children who heard the crash. She lives a few doors down from where it happened.
A very loud crash. I was coming out, and then we saw on the TV, we saw that a plane crashed, and we were scared. I was scared that it could be one of my friends on their bikes or near my house.
Eyewitnesses and East Haven residents are shaken up.
They seen it coming down. By the time we were up on it, it had already hit.
I say, maybe my house. I say, oh my God, what is this?
so worried. I tried to reach my husband, everybody.
Devastating, naturally. Words can't describe the mother, and it's awful.
Some residents living less than a mile away from the airport near the crash scene are concerned about what's going on above them.
It could be. We're so close, and we worry about things like that. But we live here, and we know there's a risk like that.
I'm pretty shocked, but I'm kind of not surprised. We see a lot of traffic very low around here. A lot of times, you see some planes that don't look like they're doing very well. I think there's going to be quite a few scared people whenever there's something coming overhead.
Parents are trying to explain the plane crash to their kids.
I came home this afternoon, and they had saw it on TV. So, we just, they know they see the planes flying low, and we just said a plane crash, and it happens. And, so what do you say to a 6- and an 8-year-old?
And police are letting residents back into this area of Charter Oaks as long as they have a driver's license. And police tell me this will take several days to complete. We're live tonight in East Haven. Noelle Gardner, News 8.
Noelle, thanks. Our ABC affiliate in Seattle has identified the pilot as a former Microsoft executive who they say was flying with his son for a college visit trip. Bill Henningsgaard was vice president at Microsoft for 14 years, and this was not his first plane crash. In 2009, Henningsgaard was flying in Washington State with his mother when his plane went down in the Columbia River. Back then, he gave an interview and joked about surviving that crash.
So what happened with your lip?
I bit it.
Hit you or what?
Well, she should have. You're going about 90 miles an hour and you come to a stop pretty fast. And I guess I just must have had my mouth open or something and bit down. So that happened right away. I got a stain on my mom's silk jacket.
Henningsgaard's mother, who survived that first crash with him, served for years as a mayor in Washington State.
Well, the pilot's brother spoke with News 8 earlier tonight. Blair Henningsgaard of Astoria, Oregon, was told about the death of his brother this afternoon by his wife, confirming that his brother and nephew Maxwell were on board. They set out from Washington State for an East Coast tour of colleges for Maxwell. They were flying into New Haven today to see Yale University. And here's what Blair told News 8's Ann Nyberg about his brother and nephew.
He was a very careful pilot. He took up flying after he retired from Microsoft. The third plane he's owned.
Is it your understanding that it was just the two of them on board the plane?
I don't know who else would have been on the plane. He had spent the day before in New York City with two of his high school buddies from Astoria. But I have no reason to think that they were on the plane with him.
In 2009, your brother crashed a plane, and it was engine problems. And he wrote about that on a blog. Was it hard for him to get back up in the air and be a pilot again?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he believed that there wasn't anything that he couldn't figure out and accomplish if he put his mind to it. He understood that the problem with that plane had to do with one particular little part that was mismanufactured and caused the fuel system malfunction.
Tell me about Maxwell.
Max is a handsome, highly intelligent, personable young man. He enjoyed crew. He was about 6'2", in great shape, had a great attitude, great sense of humor.